The gravel road twisted up the side of the mountain like a serpent cloaked in mist. Rain pelted the windshield of the old, rental minivan, the wipers screeching in protest. Vincent Mercer gritted his teeth and leaned forward, straining to see through the blur of water and darkness. Every turn of the wheel felt like a gamble. Beside him, in the passenger seat, his 8-year-old daughter Ava lay curled under her oversized hoodie, her cheeks pink with fever and her breath faintly wheezy. "You'll be okay, sweetheart. Just a little further," Vincent whispered, more to himself than to her. But he didn't believe it. The GPS had long since frozen. No signal. The last gas station had been over 30 miles ago. The plan had been a weekend away in a secluded lodge, a father-daughter getaway from boardrooms and city noise. Now, they were stranded in the heart of nowhere. With a loud cough, the engine sputtered. Then silence. The headlights flickered once and died, leaving them wrapped in shadows. Vincent slammed the steering wheel. "No. No, no, no." Ava stirred with a faint whimper. Vincent reached over, touching her forehead. It was burning. His stomach clenched. He tried his phone again. Still nothing. "Okay, okay. Think," he muttered. He opened the door and was instantly swallowed by the storm. Rain lashed his face, cold and relentless. The forest loomed around him, dense pines, gnarled oaks, the underbrush thick and unfamiliar. He scanned the empty road. No lights. No houses. Not even a sound except the hiss of rain and his own panic. "Ava, stay in the car," he called over his shoulder. "I'll try to get help." But as he took a step into the downpour, a faint glow shimmered through the trees. At first, he thought it was lightning. But the glow didn't vanish. It moved. A figure emerged slowly, carrying a lantern that shimmered gold in the stormy dark. She wore a long waxed coat with the hood pulled low over her brow. Her boots squelched with each step in the mud. Over one shoulder, she carried a canvas bag. She approached with unhurried steps, her posture calm, steady, almost unreal in the chaos of the rain. "You'll catch pneumonia standing out here," she said in a clear, clipped voice. Vincent stepped back protectively toward the van. "Who are you?" "Someone with a roof and firelight. And the only one within 10 miles willing to take in a stranger in the middle of a storm." "I've got a sick kid in there," Vincent said, pointing toward the car. "I know," she replied. "I saw her through the glass. She's running a fever. If you stay here, she's going to get worse. Maybe fatally worse." He stared at the woman, uncertain. His instincts swore, stranger danger versus sheer desperation. "You'll have to trust me," she added. He hesitated, but then Ava coughed weakly. Her skin had grown pale. He couldn't gamble with her life. "I'm Vincent. My daughter's name is Ava." The woman nodded. "Follow me." She turned and began to walk. Vincent gently lifted Ava in his arms, clutching her to his chest. Her head lolled on his shoulder as he trudged after the woman through the trees. The path was narrow and slick, winding through moss and puddles, the storm muffling every sound except the splash of boots and Vincent's heavy breaths. After what felt like an eternity, the trees parted to reveal a wooden cottage tucked between two hills. Smoke curled lazily from a stone chimney. Warm yellow light glowed through the windows. The woman opened the door without looking back. Inside. Quickly. Vincent stepped into the cabin and was instantly embraced by warmth and the scent of something earthy and sweet. The woman moved briskly, setting down her lantern and lighting 2 more oil lamps. The space was modest, wooden beams, stone fireplace, shelves lined with dried herbs and mismatched cups. "Lay her near the stove," she instructed. Vincent did as she said, settling Ava gently onto a thick woolen rug next to a low bench lined with blankets. The woman knelt beside Ava, unzipped her hoodie, and checked her pulse. "Fever's high," she murmured. "You've got any medication?" Vincent shook his head. "No. Just wanted to get her somewhere peaceful. That was the whole point. I didn't expect to get stranded." The woman nodded and stood, moving toward a shelf full of jars. She pulled down 2 containers and began mixing something into a ceramic mug. "What is that?" Vincent asked, watching warily. "Wild peppermint. Elderflower. Some turmeric. Wait. Are you a doctor?" She paused, turned her head slightly toward him. "I'm not going to hand you a diploma, if that's what you're asking. But I've treated more fevers than I can count. You want to wait for a medevac, you'll be waiting until morning. Maybe longer." She knelt again and gently helped Ava drink the warm infusion, holding the cup steady as the girl sipped with trembling lips. "My name's Rowan," she said finally. "I live here. Full time." Vincent extended a hand. "Thanks for helping us." Rowan didn't take it. "Your daughter's the one that needs help." "You? You just need to warm up and stop trying to act like this isn't out of your hands." He looked down. His jeans were soaked, his jacket clinging with rainwater, mud on his boots. "In the back, there's a towel. Dry off. I'll watch her." Vincent stepped away reluctantly, glancing back at Ava. The girl was already sleeping more soundly. He found the towel and a dry blanket folded on a wooden chair and began to strip off his wet clothes. When he returned to the main room, Ava was tucked in snugly, and Rowan was tending the fire. "You live here alone?" Vincent asked. "Yes." "Why?" Rowan looked up, a glimmer of firelight in her eyes. "Because peace is something you build, not something you find." Vincent said nothing. He sank into a chair near the hearth, running a hand through his damp hair. The storm roared outside, but inside, there was something still, real. "You'd be surprised," Rowan added, "what you start hearing when the world finally goes quiet." And as he stared into the flickering fire, the weight of the city, the deadlines, the empty calendar alerts, all of it began to blur. What remained was a sick child, a stranger with kind eyes, and the whisper of something long forgotten. A place not just to rest, but maybe to begin again. The morning air carried the scent of damp earth and wood smoke, filtering in through the hand-stitched curtains that fluttered with the early breeze. Vincent woke with a stiff neck, still curled in the old rocking chair near the fireplace. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was. The soft crackle of the dying fire and the rhythmic ticking of a clock on the wall grounded him before memory came rushing back: his daughter, the storm, the stranger in the forest. His eyes darted to the low bench beside the stove. Ava lay tucked beneath a thick woolen blanket, her hair spread like a halo on the pillow, her cheeks less flushed than the night before. A small cloth rested across her forehead. The rise and fall of her chest, though faint, was calm and steady. "She's doing better," came a voice from the corner. Vincent turned. Rowan stood beside a wide ceramic bowl, stirring something with a long-handled spoon. She wore a loose flannel shirt rolled up at the elbows, and her long dark hair was tied back into a messy braid. There was no smile on her face, but her tone was lighter than the night before. "The fever broke around midnight," she said, glancing at him briefly. That tea helped her sweat it out. Vincent rose slowly from the chair, his body sore from sleeping upright. "Thank you. I honestly didn't know what else to do." Rowan nodded but didn't respond right away. She ladled the thick, creamy contents of the bowl into two wooden dishes and set them on the small kitchen table. "Breakfast," she said simply. "You need to eat." He hesitated. "What's in it?" "Oats, goat's milk, some foraged berries. It'll keep your strength up." Vincent glanced back at Ava before walking over. He pulled out a chair opposite her and sat down. The chair creaked beneath his weight. "So, you really live out here all alone?" "Not alone," Rowan said, slicing a loaf of bread. "There's birds, elk, foxes. A porcupine I call Harold lives under the porch. Doesn't say much, but he's dependable." Vincent cracked a faint smile, but Rowan remained serious. "No family?" he asked. She paused, then set the knife down. "I used to have one. But life moved on, and I moved with it. This is where I stopped." Vincent stirred the porridge absent-mindedly. "I used to think the only real life was in cities. Noise, ambition, momentum. You stop for a second, you fall behind." "And now?" Rowan asked, not looking at him. "I don't know," he admitted. "When the car broke down, I thought I'd ruined everything. Ava was so sick, and I felt useless. All that money, all that planning, and it meant nothing when I was stuck on a road with no reception." Rowan looked at him then. Her eyes were steady, dark like rich soil. "Maybe the problem isn't the road," she said quietly. "Maybe it's what you expected to find at the end of it." They ate in silence for a while. Outside, the storm had passed. Through the window, patches of blue sky broke through heavy clouds. The forest glistened, renewed, humming with life. Vincent set his spoon down and exhaled. "You're not like anyone I've met before." Rowan didn't respond immediately. She stood and began clearing the table. "I'm not interested in being anyone else," she said finally. "This place, this way of living, wasn't supposed to be some grand statement. I just got tired of being surrounded by noise and not hearing myself think." Vincent watched her quietly, then glanced toward Ava again. His daughter stirred slightly, her small hand shifting beneath the blanket. "She's my everything," he said. "Since her mom passed, I've been trying to build a life that keeps her safe. Routines, schedules, checklists. I thought if I could control every detail, nothing would fall apart." Rowan's voice was soft but firm. "But control doesn't mean peace." Vincent stood and walked over to his daughter, kneeling beside her. He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. She hasn't smiled in weeks. The city, school, everything. It's been too much. Rowan crouched beside him. Give her space to breathe. She's already healing. Vincent turned to Rowan. You really believe this place can heal people? I don't think the forest fixes you, she said. I think it gives you space to feel what you've buried. There was a long pause. Rowan stood and moved toward the window, gazing out into the trees. I used to be like you, she said. Chasing goals, deadlines. I used to work in interior design, big buildings, expensive showrooms. But after my brother died, I couldn't look at clean white walls anymore. I came here for a weekend. I never left. Vincent remained silent, absorbing her words. Finally, he asked, do you ever regret it? She smiled faintly. Every now and then. But when I wake up and hear nothing but wind and birdsong, I remember why I stayed. Ava stirred again, her voice a whisper. Daddy? Vincent turned instantly. I'm here, honey. She blinked up at him, her voice small. Where are we? In a safe place, he whispered, stroking her hair. You're okay. Rowan stepped away, giving them space. She refilled the kettle and began preparing another batch of herbal tea. Her movements were gentle, practiced, and grounded. She didn't hover, didn't intrude, just existed in the way only someone truly at peace with themselves could. Vincent helped Ava sit up and sip the tea Rowan brought. The girl's hands were weak but steady. Her fever had broken, and her cheeks now had a touch of color. As the fire crackled and steam curled from the mug, Vincent looked at Rowan again. This cabin. It's not just a shelter. It feels like a heartbeat. Rowan didn't smile, but her eyes softened. That's the forest. It pulses under everything. You just have to be still long enough to hear it. They sat together as the storm gave way to golden light breaking through the canopy. Somewhere deep in the trees, a bird began to sing. Vincent had come looking for control. But here, in this quiet corner of the world, something else was beginning to stir, a new rhythm, unfamiliar but steady. Not a plan. Not a blueprint. A beginning. The third morning came with birdsong and sunlight slanting through the narrow windows of Rowan's cabin. The storm was a memory now, but its presence lingered in damp leaves and the smell of wet pine. Vincent stepped out onto the porch, rubbing the back of his neck, surprised at how quickly he'd grown used to the scent of moss and firewood. Inside, Ava actually giggled, as she sat cross-legged on the floor, arranging stones and pine cones in little spirals. Rowan sat beside her, teaching her the names of each one like a nature guide. That's quartz. This is birch bark. And this here? She handed Ava a smooth flat rock. You can use this to draw on the porch if the sun dries it out. Vincent leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. He watched as his daughter, who just days ago was pale and quiet, now laughed barefoot on a dusty wooden floor. Her hair was messy, her hands smudged with dirt, and her eyes brighter than they'd been in months. Looks like she's doing better, Rowan said without turning. She's different here, Vincent replied. It's like a different kid woke up in her place. Rowan looked over her shoulder. She didn't change. You just finally gave her the space to show who she already was. Vincent frowned, stepping down into the yard. He scanned the treetops, the way the morning fog still clung in patches. I'm grateful. Really. But I still need to figure out how we're getting out of here. There's no signal. No rescue. This wasn't supposed to last more than a night. Rowan stood, brushing off her hands. The road will clear eventually. Storms pass. But what are you racing back to? I've got a business to run. Meetings. Employees. Projects stacked a mile high. He exhaled sharply. I have a life, Rowan. She arched a brow. Do you? He scowled. Excuse me? You said it yourself, your daughter's different here. She's alive. Open. Maybe you should ask yourself why that only happened away from the life you built. The words hit harder than he expected. He turned away and walked toward the trailhead, the same muddy path they had taken in the storm. The car was still dead by the side of the road, and even though the sky had cleared, the isolation was unchanged. Behind him, Ava's laughter rose again. He turned just slightly, catching a glimpse of her skipping after Rowan toward the garden beds beyond the cabin. Later that afternoon, he found muddy footprints across the floor when he stepped inside. Ava! He called, alarmed. She popped her head in from the back door, her cheeks flushed, hair tangled, and a wide grin splitting her face. Yes, Daddy? What happened to you? His voice sharpened. You're filthy. I was helping Rowan plant lavender. She said I have good gardener hands. Sweetheart, this isn't a playground. You could have cut yourself, Stepped on something dangerous, this isn't safe. Ava's smile dropped. Her hands curled in front of her as if she expected to be scolded further. Rowan entered behind her, wiping her hands on a towel, a smear of soil across her cheek. She was with me, Rowan said calmly. We were careful. She's 7, Vincent snapped. You should have told me what you were doing. Rowan crossed her arms. You built interactive parks in the city, didn't you? Safe spaces for children to explore? Why does this scare you so much? She's not a design, Vincent bit back. She's my daughter. She's my responsibility. I respect that, Rowan said, voice steady. But maybe what she needs isn't just protection. Maybe she needs permission to connect. To live. Vincent turned away, jaw tight. He could feel the cracks forming beneath the weight of his own logic. Every word she spoke chipped away at something he hadn't realized was brittle. You think I don't care, he muttered. No, Rowan said gently. I think you care so much that you forgot how to let go. Silence fell. Ava stood awkwardly in the doorway, unsure of what to do. Rowan turned to her, brushing hair from her forehead. Go clean up, little one, she said softly. Ava nodded and disappeared down the hallway. Vincent sat heavily near the hearth, running a hand over his face. I'm not trying to be the bad guy. You're not, Rowan replied. You're a father who's spent too long trying to build a world that won't break. She crouched by the fire and added another log, her fingers graceful and slow. But the world does break, Vincent. And sometimes the pieces come back together better than before. He stared at the flames. I used to believe that design could fix anything. If I planned enough, nothing could go wrong. I built towers that touched the clouds. Projects that got praise. But none of it made me feel full. Rowan looked at him, truly looked, her voice barely above a whisper. And what if wholeness isn't something you design? What if it's something you allow? That evening, after Ava had gone to bed, Vincent stepped outside and found Rowan sitting on a handmade swing tied between two birch trees. She swayed slowly, her boots brushing the grass. He sat beside her. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For letting my daughter feel the ground beneath her feet without asking for permission. Rowan smiled softly, her face lit by starlight. She reminded me of myself, she said. Before the noise. They sat in silence for a long time. Wind rustled the leaves above them. An owl called out once, distant and calm. You really never wanted to go back? Vincent asked. I tried once, Rowan said. I lasted 3 days. The walls echoed. The streets moved too fast. I couldn't breathe. Vincent looked up at the stars. What would you build if no one told you what it had to be? She thought for a moment, then said, a place where people could exist without rushing. Where they could feel again. And remember who they were before life got too loud. You might already have that, he said. She glanced at him. And you? What would you build? Vincent didn't answer right away. But in his mind, he saw Ava dancing in the dirt. He saw the light in her eyes, the way her laughter had returned in the quiet. He thought of Rowan's steadiness, the cabin's warmth, the space between them filled with something he hadn't known he needed. Maybe, he said finally, I'd build a life worth living. Not just surviving. Rowan said nothing. But when she reached out and gently took his hand, her fingers cool and sure, he felt something take root deep within him. Not certainty. But choice. Not control. But connection. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The car engine hummed again. Repaired by Rowan's guidance and a salvaged battery from an old truck down the mountain, it now ran smoother than before. But as Vincent drove down the winding road, each turn away from the forest felt like peeling off a piece of something vital. In the back seat, Ava sat quietly, hugging a soft stuffed fox Rowan had made for her from leftover fabric and wool. Its button eyes gleamed with personality, its crooked seams a badge of love. Neither of them said much. The trees thinned. The sunlight changed, less dappled through leaves, more sharp and sterile as the pavement widened. Civilization resumed its dominion. Road signs. Billboards. Electrical lines like veins of a concrete heart. Vincent glanced in the rearview mirror. Ava was staring out the window, not at the scenery, but through it. Like she was still in the forest, tracing the outline of ferns in her mind. I wish we could have stayed longer, she whispered. Vincent's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. I know, baby. Me too. Rowan hadn't asked them to stay. She'd embraced Ava at the cabin's threshold, whispering something into her hair that Vincent didn't catch. Then she turned to him, no grand farewell, just a hand resting briefly on his arm and a few quiet words, be safe. Some roads find their way back. And now they were back in the city. The apartment was cold, not in temperature, but in spirit. Polished floors, spotless counters, white noise from air ducts that never turned off. What had once been a sanctuary of efficiency now felt like a showroom, staged, sterile, and hollow. Ava walked in without a word, slipping off her shoes and leaving faint damp prints on the hardwood. She vanished into her room without needing to be told. Vincent stood alone in the living room, suitcase in hand, staring at the skyline through towering glass windows. The view, once a source of pride, now felt foreign. Like something he'd designed for someone else. That night, he tried to work. He sat at his desk, opened his laptop, and pulled up the blueprints for a luxury resort. The same project he'd been pouring months into, his legacy build. A series of elegant villas, infinity pools, and spas nestled into what the firm had called a prime untouched woodland. Now, all he saw in the plans was destruction. Trees flattened into swimming lanes. Routes carved out for private cabanas. And right in the middle of it all, the spot where Rowan's cabin had been. He leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and saw her fingers trailing through lavender. Her hands shaping clay. Ava's voice laughing as she learned to name stones and flowers. The forest wasn't just beautiful, it had breathed. And he was about to suffocate it for profit. He shut the laptop and pushed it away. Then he stared into the black screen until his reflection faded in the darkness. And for the first time in his life, he felt ashamed of what he'd built. The next morning, he walked into the glass-paneled headquarters of Ashmore Design and Build. It was early, but already a cluster of executives stood around the long conference table, waiting for him to present his final vision for the resort. He walked in holding the sleek black presentation folder, but his steps felt heavier with each passing second. Vincent, one of the partners, greeted with a grin. "Big day. Let's see what you've got." Vincent opened the folder, stared at the images, clean lines, breathtaking visuals, award-winning concepts. He closed it. "I can't do this." A silence swept across the room like a dropped curtain. "I'm withdrawing from the project," he said, voice steady. Another executive leaned forward, baffled. "Vincent, this is a $40 million development. Are you okay?" He looked out the window. The skyline loomed like steel fingers. But his mind was full of trees. Of soil. Of quiet. "I visited the land," he said. "I met the people who live there. It's not wilderness to be claimed. It's full. Alive. And what we're doing, it's not creation. It's erasure." A tense beat passed. "You realize what you're walking away from, right?" He nodded. "Better than ever." And he left. Just like that. Not angry. Not dramatic. Just done. That evening, Ava sat curled on the balcony in her oversized hoodie, her sketchbook open on her knees. Pages fluttered in the breeze, pencil drawings of trees, mushrooms, birds, and a woman with long braids and worn boots. She had sketched Rowan from memory, again and again, as if drawing her into existence could bring her closer. Vincent sat beside her and looked out over the street below. The city glowed, but it was a glow that no longer comforted him. "I don't like it here," Ava said softly. "It smells like plastic. And there are no crickets." He didn't answer at first. Then he said, "Do you miss Rowan?" Ava nodded, her voice small. "And the foxes. And the lavender patch. And the sky at night." It was quiet. But not the lonely kind. Vincent placed his arm around her. She leaned into him, just a little. "I think I forgot how to breathe until I was there," he said. Ava looked up at him, honest and unblinking. "Then why are we here?" He had no answer. That night, after she went to bed, he stood in the kitchen holding a mug of tea he'd forgotten to drink. His fingers wrapped around the ceramic like it could anchor him. But the weight that pulled at him came from somewhere deeper. By morning, he had made his decision. He packed a bag, just the essentials. Ava's favorite hoodie. The sketchbook. The fox toy. A few of his tools. When Ava woke, he was zipping up her backpack. "Where are we going?" she asked, blinking sleepily. Vincent knelt beside her. "We're going back. To the place where we felt alive." Her eyes widened. "Really? Really?" She hugged the fox tighter and whispered, "Back home." They left the apartment without a second glance. Vincent didn't need to explain it to the world. He didn't need approval or applause. He just needed to go. Back to where the moss grew thick. Back to where Ava had learned to laugh again. Back to where a woman named Rowan had taught him that peace wasn't a place you find. It was a place you choose. Weeks passed, and the forest no longer felt like a detour, it felt like destiny. Vincent and Ava returned not just as guests, but as people ready to belong. With Rowan's quiet help, Vincent found a cabin just over the ridge from hers, weathered, in need of care, but strong in its bones. He rolled up his sleeves, patched the roof with salvaged shingles, and carved out new windows to let in more light. The city man's hands blistered at first. But soon, they toughened. Strength grew where convenience had once lived. Ava thrived. She enrolled in the nearby village school, where mornings were spent learning math, and afternoons included foraging walks and plant sketching. She returned every day with leaves in her braids and stories in her eyes. Her laughter was wilder now, like birdsong let loose. Vincent worked remotely, designing nature-based schools and open-air clinics, projects that served the land instead of replacing it. He no longer needed tall towers to prove his worth. He just needed to see Ava laugh. To see Rowan smile when she walked through her studio, now filled with children dipping brushes into berry-dyed pigments. They didn't label it. They didn't rush it. But something real was growing between him and Rowan. It was in the shared glances during market mornings. In the way Rowan brushed soil from Ava's face with a mother's tenderness. In the way Vincent looked at the cabin he built and finally called it ours. Then one clear afternoon, beneath the towering pine where their paths had first crossed, they stood hand in hand as villagers gathered. It wasn't a wedding by city standards, no gold rings or string quartets, but it was perfect. Ava, in a dress of moss green, stood between them, reading her own vows. "Thank you for finding each other," she said, her voice trembling. "Because now, I get to have a family that feels like sunlight." Rowan wept quietly. Vincent squeezed her hand. Later, under the starlit sky, they sat together on the porch swing, Vincent, Rowan, and Ava nestled between them. Fireflies danced in the clearing, and laughter echoed from inside, where neighbors lingered around bread and stew. "You know," Rowan whispered, "I once stayed here because I was afraid to leave." "And now?" Vincent asked. "Now I stay," she said, turning to him, "because my roots finally feel like wings." He kissed her forehead. Ava sighed contentedly, already drifting to sleep between them. They didn't need city lights or concrete promises. They had found something stronger. A home not built with blueprints, but grown with love.